Welcome to BeautyRx Live, our monthly show where I, Dr. Neil Schultz, the creator of BeautyRx Skincare, has an opportunity to interact with you, the users, to answer any questions you may have, to get very valuable feedback that you can provide to me about the products, how you use them, how you experience them, because this feedback is so important in continuing to shape and evolve the line. And BeautyRx Skincare by Dr. Schultz is really the first and only physician skincare line in which you, the user, has the opportunity to interact directly with me, ask me questions, share your experiences, and to that extent, I am very, very pleased to be here today. And we will start with our first question in just a moment. And by the way, if you are coming to us or viewing us on YouTube, if you'd like to actually ask a question, then you'll need to dial in beautyrx.com/live, and then I'll be able to receive and read your question, and I'll be happy to respond. So we'll be starting with the first question in just 1 minute. While we're waiting for that question to appear, I had a recent interview by an editor of a beauty column, and they said, Dr. Schultz, what is your best tip for an emergency getting rid of just some fine lines and wrinkles around your eyes? You had too much to drink the night before, you didn't sleep enough, and all of a sudden you have these fine lines and wrinkles, you have a big event. What can I do? It's an emergency. And one of the tips that I like to share with my patients and people who use BeautyRx skincare products is to take a little Vaseline, and with that Vaseline just to rub the area, particularly below the eye or next to the eye, very firmly. 5 minutes, just firm rubbing. Now that'll make it a little pink, and that pinkness will go away in 5 or 10 minutes, but it's going to cause a little bit of swelling. And that swelling is going to puff out those fine lines and wrinkles, and it's going to last for probably 2 or 3 hours. So that's a real good emergency tip if somebody has an important event and they just need temporary relief from some fine lines and wrinkles. So we're just waiting for some questions to appear, because the only question I see is a very nice picture of myself. So we're going to get past that in just 1 minute. Okay. Ashima. We have a question from Ashima. Dr. Schultz, I watch your videos regularly. I know you're a big advocate of exfoliation. I want to ask you, can you use glycolic acid on the face? Can the use of glycolic on the face lead to cold sores? And should people with this condition go for physical exfoliation instead of chemical exfoliation? What a great question, because actually we're going to just turn the whole thing around and remind you that chemical exfoliation is so much more gentle than physical exfoliation. And in fact, people who have a history of cold sores, if you are physically exfoliating, before you do that, if you're going to go for a professional microdermabrasion or something like that, you really should take some Valtrax pills beforehand, since the trauma of the mechanical massaging and abrasion of mechanical exfoliation can actually induce a recurrence of your cold sore or your herpes on your lip. However, gentle chemical exfoliants like the glycolics in BeautyRx cannot do that. And the reason they can't do that is because we don't break the skin, we don't destroy the live layer of the epidermis. So actually, if you do have a history of herpes around your lips or anywhere on your face, best to use a gentle chemical exfoliant such as the buffered and pH-adjusted glycolics in the BeautyRx exfoliating line. We have a question from Andrew from UK. I've been on Retin-A gel, 0.225% for roughly 9 weeks. When will I start to see results, and should I move to a higher percentage? At the moment, I use it every other night. Andrew, if you're using Retin-A or any retinoid for chemical exfoliation, it's a little bit more brittle than the glycolics, but certainly it's effective. Before I would go to a higher strength, though, I would make sure that I was able to work my way up to using it every night. And if you're using it every night for 2 or 3 weeks, then you can start to increase the strength. And the next strength after 0.025 would be 0.05, which is double the strength. But when you start to say, when will I see results? It really depends on what you're using it for. Because if you're using it for acne, you should be seeing results by now. If you're using it for exfoliation, to make the skin smoother and brighter and more lustrous, it may take a little bit longer. And certainly, if you're using it to help take away fine lines and wrinkles, you've got to give it probably 3 or 4 months. And as long as we're talking about UK, I would like to say hello and good late afternoon or early evening to my favorite fan in UK, and that is to Cyber Lady. So I hope you've joined us today, and it's so nice to hear from you always. Sarah says, I see all these questions about Retin-A. I know you love glycolics. What's the difference between glycolic and Retin-A? Okay, let me make this very simple for you. In chemical exfoliants, there really are 3 main exfoliants: glycolic, retinoids, of which Retin-A is probably one of the most popular, and salicylic acid, which has been around for 50 years as a spot treatment for acne, but works mostly because it's a very good exfoliant. Glycolics have a much greater range of strength, from 1% all the way up to 20%. And with glycolics, I can fine-tune the strength much better than I can with retinoids, which really only come in 3 strengths, or salicylic acid, which only comes effectively in 2 strengths, 1%, 2%. With glycolics, I can also adjust the pH, and I can buffer it to ensure that we don't get irritation. Because if you want to get effective exfoliation, number 1, if your skin gets irritated, you can't use it. And number 2, there's no reason when you're doing effective exfoliation for you to have any physical signs of any negative effects like redness. When you start to push your dose on retinoids, such as tretinoin, which is the generic name for Retin-A, at a certain point you become a little bit more sun sensitive, which means it's easier for your skin to burn in the sun. And on occasion, people see broken capillaries from the use of retinoids. So because glycolics, as the chief and most important alpha hydroxy acid, is much more forgiving and having such an adjustable strength, so we can make sure if we're starting you at 8%, then we can move up to 10%, then to 12 or 15%, because I have that versatility with adjusting the dose specifically for your needs, and because I can pH adjust it to make it stable, so the strength is the very same from the first time you use it to the last time you use whatever is in that bottle, so there's no degrading of the strength as there are with other glycolics by other brands other than BeautyRx. And because we don't get into issues of sun sensitivity or broken capillaries, and it's just a much less brittle experience and a much smoother transition for effective and harmless exfoliation. Just stay with us while we look at some other questions, and I'll remind you, if you're coming to us through YouTube today, that if you'd like to ask a question for me to respond to, and this is a great opportunity for you actually to be in contact with the person who makes these products and developed the line, please come to BeautyRx.com/live so we can actually see your questions. Well, it seems to be that an awful lot of people today have questions about Retin-A. So I'm going to tell you that Sam said that he tried Retin-A for acne about 2 years ago. After about 3 days, he got a horrible breakout all over his forehead. Is this normal for Retin-A to do this? It's really, Sam, that's really not the typical experience with retinoids for you to get a breakout. But it does bring up one very, very interesting point. And that is, anytime you start a new skincare program, regimen, product, there's never any reason to get worse before you get better. And if you're getting worse before you're getting better, that product isn't for you. So while I don't think that's typical experience with retinoids, although there can be some irritation, but not a big breakout, if that was your experience, that told you that that particular product really just isn't right for your skin, and you need to go to something else. Whether you need to go to a different strength or even a different actual product, that really depends on why it broke you out. And of course, I can't answer that. But no, you shouldn't have to get worse before you get better. Marianne says, I have hay fever. I get deep wrinkles under my eyes as a result of rubbing them. Well, here we are. A few minutes ago, I told you that a solution for fine lines and wrinkles under your eyes is to massage them and rub them. And here we have poor Marianne who says that as a result of rubbing her eyes, she's getting wrinkles. Can I get a cream to get rid of it? If not, what else can I do? Well, this is a very interesting point, because really what's happened here is that Marianne, as a result of such firm rubbing, much firmer than I would recommend as an emergency to get rid of fine lines and wrinkles temporarily, as a result of such firm rubbing has caused so much swelling that as that skin stretches out, then when the swelling goes away, the skin has to settle back down. And because it's been stretched out and the elastic fibers have experienced that so many times, they don't just retract like a rubber band does immediately. So it takes a while for her to actually get retraction of the skin, which is what's causing sort of that rippling effect of all those fine lines and wrinkles. And in this case, Marianne, you should be using compresses of equal parts of skim milk and water with a handkerchief or a piece of t-shirt dipped in the room temperature skim milk and water. Wring it out halfway, leave it on the area, and the evaporation will cause cooling and some contraction of that skin so that the fine lines and wrinkles from the excessive stretching actually go away. The other thing you can do is use a moisturizer, and using a moisturizer will help hydrate the area and again add some volume to try to minimize the appearance of those fine lines and wrinkles. And lastly, tensor products that contain peptides that actually, when they dry on your skin, they're like a lattice, like a net, and as they dry, the molecules become shorter, and as they become shorter, they just tighten the skin. So that's another thing that you can do. And of course, next time, instead of rubbing your eyes, to prevent this whole problem, take an ice cube and touch the area with an ice cube. And that will help relieve the discomfort without all of the swelling that then caused that whole problem. Well, I'm looking for another question here. We're going to just make a technical change on the instant messaging here to see if we can get to the next screen. How can we get past this screen? Is there anything? No. Okay. So Jocelyn says, what's the difference between a serum and a gel? A cream and a lotion. And does it matter which I get? Jocelyn, these are great questions, because it goes back to the fact that every skincare product you use has two parts. It has an active ingredient and it has a vehicle. The active ingredient is the glycolic or the salicylic or the retin-A, and the vehicle is the goop in which you put it. That's how you deliver those few molecules to your skin. And that vehicle can be what you're asking about: serum, gel, lotion, cream. So let's start with lotion and cream. Lotions and creams are both water-based materials which have some oil in them, but they're water-based. And the thinner the viscosity, meaning the more water and the less oil, or the less, let me say, solid particles in it, the more apt it is to be a lotion. Creamier products have less water and more of the other materials, including small amounts of oils. So thinner products like lotions, they spread more easily. It's much easier to spread them over large areas. That's why most sunscreen products for your body are in lotion form, so that you can easily spread them. Creams generally tend to be made for smaller areas like your face and your hands, your neck, your décolletage. A serum and a gel really have nothing to do with each other. A gel is a single-phase system, which means that everything dissolves in everything else, but that gel usually has an alcohol base, or the predominance of the material is alcohol. A serum can be anything that's a single phase, meaning not oil and water, just all oil, just all water. Vaseline is actually a serum. Johnson's baby oil is actually a serum. But you think of serums as very light, elegant materials that dry quickly on your skin. Well, those are serums, which are mostly water-based. They have some proteins, some peptides, and other fillers in them, glycerin perhaps, but they just dry quickly. So a serum is just a form of it's just one of many different single-phase vehicles, and it can be of any thickness, and when we say thickness we mean viscosity, from something as light as something that spreads out so thin that it becomes invisible on your skin to something as heavy as Vaseline. So in follow-up, Jocelyn, does it matter which I get? Of course it does, because that depends on your oil and water skin type. If you have normal skin, then you have an appropriate balance in your skin and on your skin of water and oil. And if you have oily skin, you've got too much oil. So you want to make sure you're using a vehicle that is water-based, like a gel or a serum that's water-based, a lotion or a cream that's water-based. If you have mature skin usually occurs with people 50s, 60s, 70s. Not only do they not have enough water, but they don't have enough oil. Well, here you want oil-based products. And what about people with combination skin? Because that's such a common problem for people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. And that's one of the skin types that BeautyRx skincare is so directed at addressing because it's such a common imbalance. Well, in this case, because combination means too much oil in the T-zone and not enough water in other areas, you want to use a water-based product because you certainly don't want to add any oil to the T-zone, which already has too much oil. And you want to use, again, a water-based product on your cheeks because you want to add water. Dryness is the absence of water, not the absence of oil. The only time you have an absence of oil is in mature skin. So that's the only time it really makes sense to be adding oil to your skin. Well, I'm very happy to hear from my favorite lady from the UK. So Cyber Lady asks, even if you're covered in an initial answer, please discuss it. Dr. Schultz, how do you feel about microdermabrasion? I enjoy physical exfoliation at times. Microdermabrasion, which is a form of physical exfoliation, definitely has a role. Number one, it's a completely different tactile experience compared to chemical exfoliation. When you feel something like that, with all the different sensory parts to it, you hear it, you feel it, you see it, you just enjoy that experience. And part of what we're doing here, in addition to correcting the skin, is really trying to have an experience that's pleasant. So as long as your skin is not very fair and very thin with a lot of broken capillaries or very sensitive, there's nothing wrong with microdermabrasion as a physical exfoliant. Don't forget, the reason that most men's skin at the same age as women in their 30s and 40s and 50s, that most men's skin looks better than women's skin is because they have been physically exfoliating with a razor almost every day since they're 12, 13, or 14 years old. So physical exfoliation certainly has a role. The reason that I am so impressed and so much a fan of chemical exfoliation is that because you can get more predictable, exact, and precise results. But if you are availing yourself of physical exfoliation, like microdermabrasion, you're going to a professional who is doing it the same amount of time with the same particles, the same pressure, then you can be having quality control and reproducibility of getting the same experience with your physical exfoliation. And as long as your skin type is appropriate for it, by all means, go for it. What I often tell most of my patients who don't have sensitive skin, if they enjoy both physical exfoliation as well as the efficacy of chemical exfoliation, we do 2 chemical exfoliations to each physical exfoliation. So if they're on a program of having 6 exfoliations over a period of 2 or 3 months, we do chemical, chemical, physical, and we then repeat that sequence. And thank you for asking that really important question. Christina asked, is it possible to get rid of redness from acne without laser treatments? Christina, very important because so many things that people think are scars from acne really aren't scars, they're just discolorations. Either red ones that you're talking about, or sometimes brown ones as a result of the injury of the pimple, but those aren't scars, those are flat discolorations. So when it comes to the reds, other than laser treatments, the thing that's most effective at reducing the redness, first of all, is tincture of thyme. Over a period of time, the redness will go away. But we don't want to wait for time. We want to get results faster. So in this case, you want to get an over-the-counter cortisone cream. 1%, not stronger than 1%, but 1%, and very lightly and discreetly put a little bit of that cortisone cream just on the flat red spots. The cortisone cream, after a week or two, will cause somewhat of a contraction of the vessels that are engorged, bringing in blood, which is the reason you see the redness. Why are they there? Because your pimple was an injury. Skin is very smart. It wants to repair that injury, so it brings in more nutrients through supply lines. Supply lines are the blood vessels. It expands them. By expanding them, putting more blood, nutrients into the supply lines, you can see them. At a certain point, you have enough nutrients. The skin has been healed. Sometimes skin's a little verklempt. It tries too much repair, and you don't need that redness anymore. And that's the time when you can put a little bit of cortisone cream on, but over the counter, so it's not too strong for your skin, 2 or 3 times a day, just on the red spots, only up to 2 weeks. And if you don't have over-the-counter cortisones available to you, there's another way we can reduce redness, which is a neat trick. You take a handkerchief, soak it with water, room temperature, wring it out halfway, and leave it on your face. Leave it there for 2 minutes or 3 minutes, take the handkerchief off, and allow the water to dry. As the water dries, it uses up heat. And as it uses up heat, it causes those enlarged blood vessels to contract and decreases the redness. Do that 2 or 3 times a day, again for a week or 2, and you'll see an improvement. Not as convenient as applying the cream, but an excellent alternative. Ashima asked in follow-up to our first question about possible cold sores. Which one of the following of your products would you suggest for people susceptible to cold sores? Daily exfoliating therapy serum or advanced exfoliating therapy pads? Well, Ashima, I think that if chemical exfoliation is new to you, I would start with the daily exfoliating therapy serum because it's the 8% product. It is definitely a starter product, and I understand your concerns about not wanting to break out. Nobody has a good time with a cold sore. So go with the first strength. Go with the starter strength. Use 3 drops to cover your entire face. Use it every night after you wash your face. And after a week or 2 weeks, if you like the way your skin is looking, you might even increase it to twice a day for another 2 weeks. Again, you only need 3 drops to cover your entire face. At that point, after a month, then introduce the advanced exfoliating therapy pads. But they're used on alternate nights. So start them on alternate nights. Just pick 3 alternate nights, the same nights every week. And the nights you're not using the pads, continue to use your daily exfoliating therapy serum those nights. And that way you will have an integrated program of using chemical exfoliation on a daily basis with having advanced the strength. And by the way, after you've done that for a month or 2 months, then it's time to replace the daily exfoliating therapy serum with the maximum exfoliating therapy gel, because that's a 15% product. And that's how we go through the normal ascension of increasing the strength to keep increasing the results we see from exfoliation, meaning smoother, brighter, more lustrous skin, toning down the browns, helping prevent acne clogs, helping to prevent whiteheads and blackheads and even treating them. And most importantly to me, maybe not to you, but most importantly to me, it removes the early abnormal cells which contribute to the cell pool that ultimately goes on to become early precancers, like actinic keratoses, and which then go on to become squamous cell cancers. So studies have demonstrated that 8% glycolic used on a daily basis, and by the way, 8% is the minimum strength we have in BeautyRx in the cream and the serum. 8% was the strength they used in the study, which was done in Australia. a peer-reviewed controlled study which demonstrate a dramatic reduction over a period of 6 to 12 months of the incidence of these precancers, which then resulted in a reduction in the incidence of squamous cell cancers, a real important issue for people who have had more sun than perhaps they should have, because that's something that just seems to happen. I have a comment from Kat. In your video about essential skincare for your 20s, you mentioned that we should start using peptide products, but I use vitamin C antioxidant, and I have heard that you can't use peptide products with it. If that's the case, what do you recommend? The issue of incompatibility, Kat, fortunately is pretty circumscribed. It's small. And this is not a case of incompatibility. You definitely can use antioxidants with peptides. The problem with incompatibility comes when you're using retinoids. Retinoids like Retin-A, tretinoin, Tazorac, adaptoline, and all of Avita, all of these retinoids or Retin-A derived products are very fragile molecules. And they will decompose and break up and become ineffective if you mix acids with them. And when I'm talking about acids, I'm talking about real acids. So alpha hydroxy acids like glycolic, beta hydroxy acids like salicylic, and when we're talking about ascorbic acid, which is vitamin C, that's not a strong enough acid to mess up the retinoid. So vitamin C acid can be used. And there are a lot of very minor acids that are used in skincare products which will not destroy the retinoid molecule. But for sure, the most popular alpha hydroxys like glycolic and lactic and salicylic acid should not be used when you're using a retinoid. So I like to have people use their antioxidants at bedtime, and the reason for that is the antioxidants have an opportunity to absorb into the cells when there's no ultraviolet light to destroy the antioxidant. And in terms of peptide products, you can use it morning or nighttime, but if you're going to use your peptide product with your vitamin C, just make sure you're layering it in the proper order, with the thinner product first and the heavier product afterwards. By the way, I'm going to try to get to everybody's questions today, and I appreciate your patience, but we're actually having a high-class problem, having an awful lot of questions today, which I'm very happy to answer to, so please be patient and stay with us. And remember, if you're looking at us from YouTube, come on over to BeautyRx.com/live so that you can ask questions, so that I can see your questions. And I'm Dr. Neil Schultz, of course, the creator of BeautyRx Skincare, and we are doing BeautyRx Live today, as we do each month, and it is just a privilege to hear from you. This feedback is so good and so important. The questions are great, and I hope that you're having as good of a time as I am. We have a comment from Marilyn from Martinique. I love all your videos. Could you please tell me again the order of application for skincare at night and morning? Excuse my English. Your English is much better than my French. In other words, what is the first thing we have to put on the skin at night and the morning? I'm 40 years old. Well, Marilyn, at age 40, your skin is either combination or normal at this point. It's probably not still oily. So first of all, you want to prepare your skin, and we want to prepare it the same way every time you use your skincare products, because if you do, you will get predictable and reproducible results from your skincare products. So you want to use a cleanser and a toner, which again are skin type appropriate, and it depends where you are in that spectrum of oil and water. But then in the morning, the first thing you should be using is your sunscreen, whether it's a traditional chemical-based sunscreen or meaning a carbon-based sunscreen or a chem-free sunscreen. That's the first thing that goes on. Then if you need moisturizer, your moisturizer goes on next. But Martinique, tropical, humid, you may well not need any moisturizer. If you wear makeup, your makeup then goes on next. If you have any outbreaks, acne breakouts, and you need to put acne care products on your individual blemishes, if it's just a few blemishes, put them on before your sunscreen, and then put your sunscreen on, and then your moisturizer if you need it, and then your makeup. In the evening, cleanse and tone the same way as you did in the morning. But then, regardless of whether you're using exfoliants, antioxidants, skin brighteners, bleaches, peptides, moisturizers. It's a layering process. And that layering process, again, depends on the actual thickness, because thicker things can't be penetrated by thinner things. So if you were using something that was like Aquaphor or Vaseline, certainly putting the daily exfoliating therapy serum, which is a thin liquid, on top isn't going to penetrate. And the best way I can explain this is to suggest that you go to the Derm TV episode at dermtv.com about in what order to apply products. And there I actually have an illustration using different liquids of different viscosities. And the interesting thing is you see what happens when you put on something heavier afterwards. It falls to the very bottom, and you can see it falling to the very bottom of the glass because they're different colored materials. And that's really what you want to happen with your skincare products. You want each product to successively penetrate the product you put on before. So if you're putting them on in the right order, by order of how thick they are, each one will successively, as heavier, be able to penetrate. So that's the most specific answer I can give you without knowing what forms or vehicles your actual individual products are in. And again, thank you and greetings to Martinique. Okay, Cyber Lady. Hi. Cyber Lady says, I'm loving the vitamin C night serum. It's fabulous. Thank you, my greatest fan. Andrew from UK, happy to hear from you again. I'm currently using an eye cream with hyaluronic acid and saponin. Is it true that this is pointless because hyaluronic acid cannot penetrate the skin? Also, what are your thoughts on apple stem cells in products? Two very different questions, and I'm going to answer the hyaluronic first because when we get to apple stem cells, we're going to have some fun. Well, I'm having fun anyway. But hyaluronic acid, as you may remember from the Derm TV episode, is this very long molecule. It's like an endless chain. It goes on forever and ever. It is much too large to penetrate into your skin. You are correct. So why is it such a good moisturizer? It's a good moisturizer because it grabs and holds on to water. So when you put a layer of hyaluronic on your skin, it then will pick up any water that was under it, any water from the atmosphere, any water that you put on your face. And by the way, a great thing to do with a hyaluronic-based moisturizer, take a spray bottle and spray some water on your face before you put your moisturizer on, and the hyaluronic will then grab that water and hold on to it so it can rest in contact with your skin and hydrate your skin. So hyaluronic as a moisturizer is really great because it is what's called a humectant. It is hygroscopic, fancy words. That means it holds on to water and enables that moisture from your skin that you add from the atmosphere to be optimally brought into your skin. The saponin is another chemical which really isn't playing a role here other than for stabilization, and we don't need to address that. So hyaluronics as moisturizers are great. And by the way, when I do injections in the office, filler injections, a lot of the injectables today, a lot of the fillers, are made of hyaluronic acid. And the reason they're so great is because after you inject this much hyaluronic acid under the skin, the purpose of doing that is to restore the volume that's been lost from loss of collagen, elastic tissues, and fat. When I inject this much, it then absorbs water from within the dermis and swells to this much. So I get much more swelling and better results than I would have if I used a product that didn't absorb water like hyaluronic acid. So it's playing its card as a humectant and water grabber both under the skin and on top of the skin. In terms of your question about apple stem cells and products, the best advice I can give you is if anything seems too good to be true, it's probably not. And I think it's interesting that the company that makes this product proclaims that there are only 3 of these trees left on the planet, and they found all of them. And these stem cells are going to result in creating new cells for your skin that are going to do all of these wonderful things. And while I don't think that apple stem cells and products can do any harm or damage, I myself am skeptical of the results that are alleged to result from apple stem cells or pear stem cells or apricot stem cells, although my favorite is peaches. And I would, before I purchase these products for my own use, I would wait for some peer-reviewed scientific studies that demonstrate these results. And look, while I kid around and say I'm from Missouri, meaning show me, you show me, I never argue with success. If they can demonstrate that, in fact, their product does what they say it does, well, then I'm going to do a Derm TV episode on it, because I'm going to be so happy to be able to tell people about its availability. But so far, despite my looking, both on the internet and at the company, I just haven't been able to find the studies that would satisfy me as an objective scientific observer. So for the time being, I'm going to say eat your apples rather than applying them. In terms of the hyaluronic, we have several products in BeautyRx skincare that have hyaluronic in it, because I think that that is such a good moisturizer for all the reasons that we mentioned. Comment from Stephanie. I have real dry, rough skin with bumps, and my kids have it. So is there something I can use to soften and get rid of them? I also have vitiligo. What is the cause of vitiligo? I get lots of questions about my skin. I really don't know how to answer them. And is there something that I can do to keep it under control? Well, Stephanie, let's go back first to your rough skin with bumps that your kids have also. If that rough skin with bumps is on the outer part of your arm, or the under part of your arm, or on the front of your thighs, and sometimes even not in adults, but in your kids on their face, you may be telling me about keratosis pilaris, which is a condition where on the top of each hair follicle, the dead cells, instead of being shed, are accumulating in these little spiny points. And when you run your finger over it, almost feels like you're running your hand over sandpaper. So if that's the case, well, if these are extra dead cells that have accumulated, we're right back to my favorite pivotal therapeutic process of exfoliation. So you want to use an exfoliant, and for keratosis pilaris, in BeautyRx, there's a 10%, in the skincare line, there is a 10% lotion, which we use 10% glycolic lotion to remove these dead cells. We use a little bit twice a day, arms, front of thighs. If it's on the face, I would go with the daily exfoliating therapy serum, but use twice a day for a period of 2 or 3 weeks. You will actually see a decrease in these rough bumps. The skin will become smoother. Now, sometimes the bumps are surrounded by redness, and if that's the case, you may want to get an over-the-counter cortisone cream to help reduce that redness. And again, this is a condition which, while it can occur in children, teenagers, also in adults, tends to be hereditary, so I'm not surprised that your kids have it. In terms of the vitiligo, vitiligo is a condition where, unfortunately, your body has made a mistake, and the mistake that it's made is that it thinks your pigment cells that make your normal melanin, or your normal brown pigment, it thinks that your pigment cells are doing something wrong. So it's attacking them. And in attacking them, it's knocking them out. They stop making pigment, and that's why you lose the pigment in the vitiligo. There are 2 kinds of vitiligo, and it gets a little bit beyond the scope of BeautyRx at this point, but the 2 types of vitiligo, one of them is caused by an actual inflammation, and that's the most common type in the back of the hands, around the mouth, around the eyes, around openings in your body. That's caused by an inflammation, and there are new products called immunomodulators like Taclinex, Picrolimus, Protopic, Elidil, and these are products which actually can reduce the inflammation without using cortisone. And if you can knock out the cells that are attacking your pigment cells can produce brown pigment again, and your color will fill back in. But I can't go into more depth here right now, but all of these products are things you need a prescription for. You're going to need to see a dermatologist, but it's treatable. Don't give up hope. We can help these things, and there are a lot of different ways to bring back your color. By the way, my son Stuart, who created Derm TV and produces and directs it, has had keratosis pilaris on and off, and whenever he uses the products, the keratosis pilaris clears up. Of course, being strictly human, it gets better. You sort of fall off the wagon, you stop using it. When it comes back, he uses it again, and he then brings it right back under control. I'll remind you that this is BeautyRx Live. I'm Dr. Neil Schultz, creator of BeautyRx Skincare. If you're coming to us through YouTube and would like to ask me a question, to which I am so happy to respond, come on over to beautyrx.com/live so I can see your questions. This is a unique opportunity for you, the users of my products, to ask me questions about them, about the conditions you're using them for, and any other ancillary questions that I can answer for you to make your total skincare experience better and to give you more beautiful, younger, and healthier looking skin. Melissa says, I live in the United States. Now that summer is coming to a close, how should I be changing my daily skincare regimen? Melissa, great question. As we go from summer to fall, temperatures start to drop, humidity starts to drop, and as a result, there is more drying of your skin, more water loss. So while you probably will be using the same active ingredients for the same issues, you want to use them in different vehicles, and that's where we started BeautyRx Live today in talking about vehicles. So if you're accustomed to using a lotion or a serum, you may move up to a cream. If you're accustomed to using a cream, you may be moving up to something even heavier, like a very heavy oil-based lotion or even an ointment. But the point is, you need to adjust the vehicles of your skincare products twice a year, once in the fall, once in the spring, in the northern hemisphere. So in the fall, we go to slightly heavier vehicles for the same products, and in the spring, we go to lighter vehicles as the temperature warms up again and it gets more humid. And Jocelyn, you are very welcome for answering your question. Erin asked me, can I just start exfoliation with a 15% exfoliant? Erin, such an important question. BeautyRx 15% exfoliants, which are the maximum exfoliating therapy gel for combination and oily skin, and the BeautyRx maximum exfoliating therapy cream for normal and dry skin are 15% products, but they are very clearly labeled. These are not starter products. And the reason they're not starter products is because 15% is a little bit too strong for people who are starting exfoliation. And we as humans want as much as we can as soon as we can get it. We want it now. I get it. I understand that. And so many people who've come to the BeautyRx website to order products for the first time, they see the spectrum of different strengths of exfoliants, of glycolics, and they start by ordering the maximum strength. And all of these orders are reviewed by somebody. And anybody who's starting with the maximum strength, we email them and say, are you sure you want to do this? This may be too strong for you. You really need to be starting with an 8% product, like the Daily Exfoliating Therapy Cream or Serum. And if not the 8% product, then the Advanced Exfoliating Therapy Pads, which are our award-winning self-magazine Exfoliant of the Year product. But please don't start with the 15% products because they're a little bit too strong. And if you give us just a minute, we're just going to plug in to get a little extra electricity here. Otherwise, we're going to go down real soon in terms of power. So just give us a technical moment, and I'll try to wet my tongue. And again, thank you for joining BeautyRxLive.com. Kat said, thanks for answering your question. She said some very other nice things which will make me blush, and I'm not going to say them. But thank you very much, Kat. From Cyber Lady, I have Celtic Scottish skin. Hello, what else did I expect? Which is very pale. I wear an SPF every day of the year. When I'm going out, should I avoid it at times to acquire some vitamin D? How important this is. The vitamin D controversy really has not had resolution. And life is not perfect. Sunscreens, despite using them on a regular basis, don't always work completely, which is why we use the antioxidants to help supplement protection that from the damaging ultraviolet that just gets through sunscreen. But the reality is that an awful lot of people today are spending a lot more time indoors, and they've heard the message. They're using sunscreen, and they are so effectively blocking the sun from doing damage that they may actually be getting a little low in vitamin D. So this is going to be one of the first times you're going to hear this dermatologist tell you to go out without sunscreen. And my answer to this question, seriously, Miss Cyber Lady, is that once or twice a day, for 15 minutes, either in the morning, 8 o'clock in the morning, or later afternoon, 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, for 15 minutes, go out without sunscreen. The angle of the sun is sufficiently lowered so that you will get enough ultraviolet to drive your vitamin D production in the epidermis without doing a lot of damage. And in life, since life isn't perfect, we don't want you to have flawless skin and no vitamin D, which then has a negative impact on your bones, particularly in women as they become perimenopausal and postmenopausal. So we have to have a fair balance. And we can't be just completely monomaniacal as a dermatologist saying you can never go out without sunscreen. Yes, you need some ultraviolet to help make sure that you're getting enough vitamin D. But don't forget, there are plenty of supplemental forms of vitamin D, particularly through milk products, which are all supplemented with vitamin D just for this very purpose, to help prevent against deficiencies of vitamin D. And by the way, in terms of vitamin D deficiency, it's sort of you are innocent until proven guilty. You are vitamin D adequate until proven that you are deficient. So do not assume you are vitamin D deficient unless you've had the appropriate vitamin D 25-hydroxy-3 test, which is the relevant vitamin D. So there are a lot of different types of vitamin D that they can test for in your blood test. Make sure it's the one that's relevant to your tissues, and only then would I then extend the advice that I did to Cyber Lady in terms of getting the unprotected sun exposure. There are vitamin D pills, which of course can be taken rather than just having vitamin D supplements in your food. And it's getting towards the end of the hour. We were going to go just for a half an hour, but these questions, I don't want to stop. But we're going to take 2 or 3 more questions before we sign off for today. And Andrew from UK says, what's the best skincare for oily skin? Well, Andrew, we can't stop you from making all of your extra oil without tying up your oil glands with a product called Accutane, which is not the way to treat oily skin. That's for severe cystic scarring acne. But if we just want to decrease the amount of oil on your skin, and given that we can't decrease the production without taking strong internal medicine, then what we want to do is on the other side, we want to unload the skin from your oil more effectively. So that means using a cleanser, which is made for oily skin, which means it has different types of chemicals which are often called surfactants and emulsifiers that will bind more oil. When it binds and removes more oil, it's going to take a little water with it. So there is the opportunity with these stronger cleansers to actually become a little dry, but that can be supplemented very easily with a water-based moisturizer. And in order to try to avoid the over-drying of cleansers that are too strong, you want to use a 1-2 punch when you're cleansing and removing the oil load. So in addition to the cleanser, you want to use a toner, which is the same thing as an astringent. And for oily skin, your toner / astringent should have some alcohol in it, because the alcohol will again better absorb off that oil. And what happens when you get the synergy between a cleanser and a toner, you will get the synergy in oil removal without getting an additive effect in over drying and irritating your skin. So given that you're doing that, then you need to do it during the day. Certainly when you get up in the morning before you go to bed at night, but during the day, if you can't get to a sink and you can't de-oil your skin with cleansing and toning, then at least carry toner pads. And BeautyRx has anytime pads, which are pads that are infused with toner depending on what type of skin you have. But the point is, it comes in a little thin plastic case that fits in anybody's pocket or pocketbook. And during the day, when you feel you've gotten a little oily, you can't get to a sink with cleanser, you take one of these pads, you just wipe your face, it absorbs the oil, you throw the pad away, and you have effectively lightened the load of oil so you don't look shiny and you don't look like you have excessive oil all day. Dinah has a question. Doctor, can you suggest some good microdermabrasion gel, and can this be used at home? Also, what do you think of skin whitening products like Meloderm and skin whitening range of products, and do they have any side effects? Let's take the second question first. The Meloderm and other depigmenting or bleaching products generally have anywhere from 2 to 4% hydroquinone in them. And that 2 to 4% hydroquinone used to be the gold standard for bleaching ingredients because they actually tie up the molecule tyrosinase and tyrosin so that you can't make more pigment. Very effective bleach. Hydroquinone has become somewhat controversial. Not to me. I love it. I have no problems with hydroquinone. But first of all, in UK, you can't even get hydroquinone because it's been outlawed in the European community, despite the fact there's no evidence to my satisfaction that it's dangerous. But these products which contain hydroquinone in low percentages are fine. There are other bleaches over the counter with kojic acid, azelaic acid, and some of these are prescriptions, but the point is they're low strength. They are virtually harmless unless they cause skin irritation. And don't forget, anybody can get irritated from any skincare products. But the conventional bleaches, I have no problems with. I myself have a preference for hydroquinone-free products. So the brightening complex in the BeautyRx line, which has not been released to the public yet, but which I still use for my patients, is a peptide-based brightener. And it works through a synergy of 5 different peptides that tie up pigment or melanin production in 5 different places. So we get a real internal synergy, as we do with all of the proprietary ingredients in the BeautyRx products, and that's one of the reasons they work so well. So that proprietary ingredient, which is called Pentabright, will be released in the next few months to the public and on the website. But most of the products that are out there for brightening are not a problem. However, I would warn you away from any products that have greater than 4% hydroquinone. They're not available in the United States except by prescription, but in Europe, in certain communities where you can get gray market products, and particularly in South America and in Africa, they have 10 and 12 and 15% hydroquinone products. Don't use them. Those are the ones that can get you into a little trouble. In terms of microdermabrasion gel, since I generally discourage people from using at-home physical exfoliants like microdermabrasion products, as opposed to in salons where I mentioned for Cyber Lady that if she's having it done professionally, where there's control of the strength of the suction and the size of the particles and the length of the procedure, but at home, where the results of microdermabrasion gels will be directly proportional to how hard you rub, how long you rub, and what the quality control of the particle size and shape of is in the gel. I can't tell you how often in my office I treat people with second-degree burns of their face who have completely rubbed off their epidermis like a complete burn, overusing, enthusiastically using abrasive gels, whether the microdermabrasion gels or abrasive particles and cleansers, thinking if a little is good, more is better. And this is the problem I have with at-home physical exfoliation, other than shaving. So I'm not going to give you a recommendation there because I really don't want to go there and endorse that. We have one more comment here from Comfort. Dr. Schultz, I have 2 questions. When I wake up, the pores on the skin around my nose are visibly larger. That makes sense. Is there an explanation for this? Yes, there is, Comfort. During the night, the oils which have been produced have all pooled. You haven't been touching, you haven't been moving, and as a result, none of them have been sort of milked out or squeezed out, so they're just pooling there. And can it be prevented? Of course it can be prevented. It can be prevented by making sure at bedtime that you're using a very good oil-removing regimen, like I described for the gentleman before, in terms of an oil-removing cleanser and synergizing with an alcohol-containing, low percentage, alcohol-containing toner to remove as much oil as possible and to be exfoliating regularly so you are removing the dead cells that are contributing to the clog of the oil, because it's not just that the oil hasn't been massaged out or hasn't been milked out. It has to do with the fact that the egress duct. The duct or the tube that the oil is coming out through is partially blocked to start with by the dead cells that line the duct that are not being exfoliated with regular exfoliation, so they fall into the mix with the oils. They form this glob which gets stuck. And in addition to that, this is a case where physical exfoliation at home in a controlled fashion actually is recommended. So if you're having that problem, then at the end of your shower, you should be using a cleanser that has polyethylene beads, not apricot, not shells from nuts, because they're very sharp and angular, but synthetic polyethylene beads, which are round plastic beads that come in very, very tiny sizes that are put into the cleanser at the end of the shower when your skin has been sort of steamed so the pores are open for 10 or 15 seconds, not 10 or 15 minutes, 10 or 15 seconds. You gently massage those beads into the large pored area to help physically dislodge the clogs. And there's a second part to the question. The bottom half of my face, from my cheeks to my chin, is darker than the top. Is it possible to achieve even skin tone, chemically or naturally? Is arbutin, a derivative of hydroquinone, a good way to do? Well, arbutin is a very good bleach. So that's one of the chemicals that I think is very good as a bleach and really as an alternative to hydroquinone. But there are 3 things necessary to even your skin tone. Because the sun can make your pigment faster and darken you faster, then all of my great products can lighten you. If you're not doing effective sun protection, we're never going to get there with the bleaching and brightening and lightening process. So in this case, I recommend strictly that you use a chem-free product, and BeautyRx has 2 chem-free products. We have the Chem-Free Solar Defense Cream, SPF 30 for face and body, and of course we have the Maximum Solar Defense Sheer Cream, SPF 50. Either of these are appropriate for the type of protection you need to get almost a complete block from the sun, so ultraviolet is not driving the process of making more brown. Given that, you need to exfoliate daily to take off the layers of cells in this area between your nose and your mouth or your chin that have too much pigment in them, and you need a brightening or a bleaching product such as the BeautyRx Brightening Complex or other things we've discussed today to stop the pigment cells from making that extra pigment. So it's 1, 2, 3 steps. The sunscreen in the morning followed by the bleach. In the evening, you use your exfoliant followed by the bleach. And I will bet you in 3 to 4 weeks you will see meaningful results. This is going to be, I believe, the last question we'll be able to take today so we don't overrun. But Dinah said, Dr. Slee said, one of your exfoliants should be best done at night. If I want to do exfoliation at night and also apply an antioxidant overnight, when exactly and for how long should exfoliation be done? Well, most of the chemical exfoliating products that I recommend are in the BeautyRx skincare line are products that are meant to be left on the skin until they dry or set. Certainly at the beginning of using the advanced exfoliating therapy pads, we recommend that people use it just for 15 minutes and then rinse it off. In that case, after you've rinsed it off, you pat your face dry and you then put your antioxidant on. If you're at the point where you use those pads for a month and you can then leave them on overnight, after they dry, just put on your antioxidant. If you're using daily exfoliating therapy cream or serum, after it sets, put on your antioxidant. If you're using the 15% maximum strength products, after it sets, which shouldn't take more than a half a minute or a minute, sets and dries, you put on your antioxidant. I have to tell you, these questions have been great. I am so excited about this opportunity to hear what's on your mind, and I'm so grateful for the response that we've had to today's session, to know that people are really getting the message, they're hearing it, they're listening, they're learning more about how to take better care of their skin, how to have more beautiful, healthier, and younger looking skin. Whether you're using my products, BeautyRx Skincare, or you're using your products, as long as you're using a regimen and using daily sun protection, you're going to get there. I think you'll get there faster and better with my products, but the point is there are a lot of good products out there. Just keep taking care of your skin. It's just a question of maintenance. I look forward to the next session of BeautyRx Live, which will be next month. Until then, send me your questions, your ideas for upcoming episodes of Durham TV. And from everybody in the BeautyRx skincare family, we wish you healthy and beautiful skin. Dr. Neil Schultz, I'll see you next month.